Okay, we are picking up our Genesis study in Genesis chapter 20. We just finished with the account of Sodom and Gomorrah and how things ended with Lot, and didn't go too well. Now we're going to start a new section in the book. Now we've moved on from Sodom. We're not going to be hearing from Lot again. And now we come back to Abram. And interesting, another story that it seems like we've been here before, but it has a little different flavor to it than the last time. And so that's what we want to take a look at today. This is Genesis 20, Abraham's dealings with Abimelech. So let's pick it up there and let's get right into it. So Teresa, would you mind reading it for us here? Verses 1 to 7, Genesis chapter 20.
Sure. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of Negeb and lived with Keshed and Shur, and he soldiered into Gerar. And Abraham said of his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech,
Abimelech, yeah.
king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Now Abraham had not approached her. So he said, "Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother'? In the integrity of my heart, in the innocence of my hands, I have done this." Then God said to him in a dream, "Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pay for you. He will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours."
Okay. All right. So here we have Abraham, and where is he journeying toward? He's leaving. He was just near Sodom looking over things, and now he's moving on. And where's he going?
Negeb Desert.
To the Negeb, and he lived between Kadesh and Shur. And he sojourned in Gerar, I guess it is. All right, let's take a look. I have a map down here of these places: Negeb, Kadesh, Shur, and Gerar. So let's see. I see Gerar. I see, where's Kadesh?
Right at the bottom of the box.
Yeah, the bottom right there. And then what was the other one? Kadesh, Shur. I don't see Shur on here.
It's over towards Egypt.
Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. That's pretty big too. All right, sure. And the Negeb, is the Negeb listed on there too?
It's the desert. It's that whole desert area.
This whole desert here is the Negeb. Okay, so he journeyed toward this area here. So he's coming, I guess he's coming from here's Gerar. So he's kind of coming in this direction here, and he encounters Abimelech. And if you can remember, so what happens here is, what does Abraham do when he enters Abimelech's territory?
He tells him that Sarah is his sister.
So Abraham said Sarah is his sister. Do you remember why he did that? He's done that before.
He was afraid. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because he was afraid because of her beauty, they would kill him to get her.
Yeah, and we want to talk about the beauty here of Sarah. How old is Sarah?
90-ish.
She's 89 right now. Remember, he just told her that she was going to be giving birth to a son next year. And she was 90 when she gives birth. She's 89. And yet he still can. What, if you remember, what is it really that makes her? I'm sure she's a noble woman. I'm sure she's probably very attractive for an 89-year-old woman. But what really makes her attractive to everyone?
Stuff.
Yeah. Remember, Abraham and Sarah have great wealth. But also Abraham and Sarah are sojourners. They're strangers in these places, meaning they have no protectors. So he's counting on sort of the hospitality and the need. And when you come into territories that are evil and wicked, where there is no sense of law and order, he does this everywhere he goes. It wasn't like a one-time thing. There are two stories where it's notable because it doesn't go according to plan, but every time he entered a place, he told people, "She's my sister."
Well,
And
she was his half-sister, right?
was his half sister. Yes. And you can say that, well, he's not exactly lying, but he is deceiving them because she is more his wife. But there's a reason he does that, and that is because if she tells them he is his wife, what is he afraid is going to happen?
They'll kill him for her.
They're going to kill him, take all the stuff with her. I mean, that's what makes her attractive, is everything that goes with her, and he's the only thing in the way of that. Now, if he says she's my sister, then the stuff doesn't go to Sarah, it would go to the next person in line. He has a little bit more protection there. So it's a safer bet for him. That's why he does it everywhere. So it's like, it's not a wicked thing that he's doing. It's just a very pragmatic way of trying to keep himself safe. It's like, we do these kind of things when we go into dangerous areas where we try to keep ourselves safe. I remember, I think I told you, when I was living in Houston as a single guy, my first year, I was in a pretty bad area. It was a cheap apartment in a pretty bad part of town. In fact, they had, I had some friends who were actually held up at gunpoint in the parking lot of my apartment complex. So it was, and they had a lot of trouble there. So when I got home, I would open up my car door and I would storm like a madman, like I was angry, to my room, to my apartment. When I was walking from the car to the apartment building, I would pretend that I was angry, which I wasn't, but I would pretend that way. And here I am. Am I being deceitful when I do that? Am I being, am I in some way doing something wrong because I'm not being honest?
Self-preservation.
Exactly right. It's like,
It's a wartime situation. You okay lying for wartime situations.
yeah. If I was in company of friends and hanging out and I was pretending to be angry and upset all the time, that would be an issue. But here it's like I'm trying to get safely from my car to my apartment, and I know that somebody who's looking for trouble is probably going to not give me a problem if he sees that I'm upset. Whereas if I'm just kind of happy and like don't have a care in the world, I'm a bigger target. So I mean, this is kind of the thing what's happening with Abraham here. It's just a simple favor he asks. He feels like, I can keep you safer, and we can keep ourselves safe better by saying you're my sister than you're my wife. Because if someone wants to take you as a wife, you're not as attracted to them because there's no money that goes with you. And even then, they'd have to ask permission of me anyway. So, and of course, I'm not going to let them marry you, kind of thing. So it makes all perfect sense. The only exception is, the only time it doesn't work is when
someone wants to marry her.
What's that again?
When someone wants to marry her.
No, that's okay when someone wants to marry her, because he can just say no. But what kind of person wants to marry her?
The king.
When the king wants to marry, he doesn't have to ask permission of anybody. He just does. The king takes what he wants. Remember the last time, who was it that took her before?
Pharaoh.
It was Pharaoh. And which is, in one sense, is kind of unthinkable. Why would King Abimelech want to take his wife? Well, you could say that is Abimelech, is he really? I mean, there's no young women out there that he would rather take. Why would Abimelech want to take Sarah?
wouldn't it be more like, like kingdoms used to intermarry in order to make like a bond between them? So they're trying to do that with Abraham.
Yeah, exactly right. Remember, Abraham is not alone there. If you remember, how many men did he take, trained men in his house several years ago?
300, was it?
He had over 300 trained men who were born in his house, which means he probably has thousands of people with him who are traveling with him. The Lord has blessed him abundantly. So he's a little mini city going through there. And so it's he's concerned. He doesn't want another Sodom and Gomorrah situation where the men of the town all gang up on him. But Abimelech comes in and sees hey, this could be great. This could be a union. And he's just going to take her. And Abraham is not in a position to do anything about it.
But God
again,
is.
What happens? And now this is a big deal. This is the second time it happens. And here's the question. God intervenes. And the question is, why does God intervene?
So that when she has a son, they'll know it's from Abraham.
Exactly right. He made a promise that Abraham would have a son through Sarah. And you can see what's probably really inspiring Abimelech to do this is the devil, the principalities and powers who are opposed to God are inspiring him to putting it in his head to do this thing, and somehow to thwart the plan of God, the promise of God. So, but God comes to Abimelech at night. And what happens here?
He reads in the riot act, puts the fear of God in them.
Yeah, so Abimelech, King Abimelech of the city, he's in Gerar, he's in his city, sent and took Sarah. Okay. God came to Abimelech in a dream, and he says, I love this talk. What does he say to him? Verse 3.
He
But
says,
God came to Abimelech in the dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man."
Yes. You're a dead man. This woman is a man's life, is a man's wife. And then what does Abimelech say in response?
he didn't know.
I didn't know. Yeah. We're innocent. I'm innocent. And it's true, right? In the integrity of heart, and he says, I've done this. He says, he's told me she's my sister, and she said he's my brother, right? And I'm a king. I don't have to ask permission here. I just did what kings do. I'm innocent here. And what does God say about that?
Send her back.
Yeah. What does he say about his innocence?
He knows he is.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you are.
And he came there to save him.
Yes. Yes. And I have kept you from sinning against me. And this is, I like this. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there must be a point that he's making to Abraham that this promise will hold.
Yes.
This
God is
whole-
faithful to his promise. And what I like about this story is, look at how God speaks to kings. I mean, you're a dead man. I mean, that's how he speaks to kings. He deals with them like they're pawns, like they're nobodies. You're a dead man. He doesn't give them the honor and the respect and all this. He knows, he sets up who the authority is here, who is the sovereign, who is the King of Kings. I appointed you, and kings God can speak to, we don't speak to kings that way, but God speaks to kings that way. They understand, so I've kept
where he
you.
says, I kept you from sinning against me. He kept them from relations.
Yes, yes, that's important. So there's no question, because remember, Isaac is going to be born very soon in the next year. And so there needs to be no confusion about who the father is. So absolutely. I did not let you touch her. Okay, now notice what he says here. What's the solution? The solution for Abimelech. What does he need to do?
Return the man's wife.
All right. So he's going to do a couple things. He says, return the man's wife. And then what?
For he is a prophet and he will pray for you.
He is a prophet. And he will pray for you. And you shall live. And if you don't return her,
You're a dead man.
yes, you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. Wow.
You know, that's one thing I don't understand, is that when the Lord punishes someone like that, he punishes everyone around him. But what about all the innocent?
Yeah, there is that's a great question, Teresa. The concept is what sometimes is referred to as a federal headship.
Right.
That, as a king, you represent all who are under you. And so if you are wicked, then all who are attached to you are to share in your wickedness and declared wicked with you. We still see that today. In World War II, who was the evildoer in Europe? Who was the wicked one there?
Yep.
It was Adolf Hitler, right?
Yeah.
But when we sent bombers to Germany, they weren't bombing Adolf Hitler's personal residence. They're bombing all of Germany because he is their head. All of Germany is declared guilty. And there were a lot of innocent people, including my family, living under Hitler's headship. And my mother lived in a camp that was being bombed in Linz, Austria during the war, at the end of the war, by Allies. And she and her siblings and my grandmother were innocent. But it's understood. They are, because of their citizenship there, they are part of a wicked country. No fault of their own in one sense, but in the situation, all of Germany is declared evil and wicked and is to be judged. Same thing with Japan. How many millions of Japanese perished in the bombings,
It's interesting in verse 4 here, he's threatening Abimelech. But in verse 4 it says, now Abimelech had not approached her. So he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? He didn't say, will you kill me?
Oh, yeah, because at this point it tells him later on that he did do something. They were already feeling the wrath of God, if I remember. And so I think it says, the Lord had, at the end of this chapter, the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah. So he'd already afflicted them in some way,
Right.
that whole household.
So he's identified with the nation as the federal head in that verse.
So he's not just going to wipe out Abimelech, he's going to wipe out Abimelech's whole line. This whole thing is going to disappear. There's this connection between fathers and sons and between families like that. There is this real connection, which again explained, if you remember, why it was that Noah does not curse Ham, but he curses Canaan. Because Ham's his son. If he curses Ham, he curses himself. And so he curses Canaan, Ham's son, is how it works. And so same thing why God doesn't take the kingdom from Solomon, but waits until takes it from Solomon's son, because Solomon is David's son, and that would be there's a union of father and son, so they share in the righteousness. So on the one hand, we have this understanding that everyone connected to Abimelech is guilty for this situation, and you'll notice they will be guilty if God, out of his mercy, keeps Abimelech from sinning, but Abimelech now, if he does not return her, is in sin and under judgment. And therefore, God, Abimelech and all who are connected to him will be judged. Meanwhile, Abraham and all who are connected to Abraham are being saved, like Lot. Lot is saved because of his connection to Abraham. So, and this kind of lays out the groundwork for the gospel. The reason why we are saved is because we are connected to Christ. He is our head. And so because he's righteous, even though we are wicked, we are, by faith, we're connected to him, and we share in the benefits of his righteousness, just like Lot shared in the benefits of Abraham's righteousness. Before, we were connected to Adam, and Adam is wicked. We shared in his corruption and in his damnation. But now we are connected to Christ. And so that's what it really comes down to, is like, to my mother in Austria at that time, you know, if she were to say, I'm tired of the bombing, I'm tired of being declared guilty, I want to find innocence, I want to be free, what would you tell her to do?
Move.
Move. Get out of there. Renounce your citizenship. They couldn't do it, of course, but if they could, you know, renounce your citizenship with Germany and become an American, or become a British, you know, citizen. That's how you do it. And that's what faith is. Faith is our renouncing our citizenship with Adam in this world and embracing our citizenship with Christ that's been offered to us. So, all right, so here's Abimelech. But notice what he does. The solution for Abimelech is not simply return the man's wife, but what has to happen before he's really saved?
Abraham has to pray for him.
Abraham has to pray for him. Now that's interesting. That's different than what happened with Pharaoh. Pharaoh in Pharaoh's time, Pharaoh was afflicted with plagues, if you remember that. And then he realized what had happened, and he returned the wife, and then he sent Abraham off with all kinds of goods, and God healed him. And so that was sort of a precursor to the Exodus. But here it's different. Abraham needs to intercede for them if he's going to be healed. Now, where will we see that concept again of a people doing wicked things, being afflicted by God, and then being healed only when someone prayed for them?
Jonah?
Moses.
Yeah. Well, Jonah goes as a prophet to Nineveh and calls them to repentance, and they pray and the Lord heals them. But I guarantee you, Jonah did not pray for the Ninevites. If anything, he was praying against them, I'm sure. But Moses, right? That was the story of Moses. And so
Job.
It's really interesting. And Job too. Yeah, it's really interesting with the Moses. Abraham's story is kind of it's like a preview of Moses' story. So Abraham goes into Egypt. His wife is taken, and there's an affliction, but God leads him out of Egypt through plagues upon Pharaoh's house. And then Abraham leaves with much more possessions than he had before. Now he's in the promised land, or actually he's in the wilderness kind of thing. He's more in the desert there. And in the wilderness, he plays the part of Moses again as the one who will intercede for this household so that they can be healed and saved. Very interesting how the Lord lays this out for us. All right, so let's see what happens. Does Abimelech do what God says? That's our big question. Jack, would you get that for us? 8 to 13.
So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, What did you see that you did? What did you see that you did this? Abraham said, I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, this is the kindness you must do to me. You must do me. At every place at which we come, say of me, he is my brother.
All right. So Abimelech's response. How does he respond to this encounter with God?
What's to air his grievances with Abraham?
Yeah, before that, though, what does he do?
We
What's
got
the
all
first
the
thing?
servants together.
Yep. He rises early, so he gets right to it, and calls his servants together. And what's their what very important how does verse 8 end? What does it say about them?
They
They're
were
very much
Too
afraid.
afraid.
Very much afraid. That's going to be a theme in this particular paragraph, this fear. Suddenly the king, who is the sovereign of the land, now very much afraid as he's encountered God.
So these people had to have believed in God, believed in Abraham's God, because otherwise, I mean, Abimelech, needless to say, was approached by God in his dream, but the rest of them, it's like he's saying that we're in trouble because of Abraham's God. I mean, we must be afraid of Abraham's God.
They are now, that's for sure. They may or may not have been before, but they certainly are now when the Lord appears to him in a dream in a fearsome way. Abimelech is terrified, and as he tells his men, they are terrified with him now. Abimelech then confronts Abraham. And what does he say to him?
What have I done to you? Why have you done this to me?
What have you done to us? Right? What have you done to us? He puts the blame on Abraham, which is interesting. Because when you see from Abimelech's point of view, Abraham is the problem here. He's the guilty one. He did wrong. You're the reason that we're suffering right now. But God never rebukes Abraham, does he? He rebukes Abimelech. It's pretty clear in this passage who is the good guy, who's the bad guy here. Who is it that God is pleased with, and who is it that God is not happy with? And Abimelech. So I think in one sense, you need to take Abimelech's, what he says there, with a little bit of a grain of salt, that this is the testimony of someone who is under the judgment of God. He is not, Abraham is described as the prophet. Abimelech is the king who's under judgment right now. So when he brings these charges against them, is he right? When he says, you have done to me things that ought not to be done. What do you think of that?
I think the king was innocent. I think he was deceived.
Yeah. Well, God does say, yes, I know that you've done this in the integrity of your heart. And so God does keep him from sinning against him. Absolutely true. So that's the question is, you have done to me things that ought not to be done. That's really interesting. Let's think about this a little bit. Because Abimelech is not just anybody. Abimelech is not the way he's talking right now. He's talking as if Abraham is the powerful one and he's the victim. Did you catch that? So Whereas, don't forget, Abimelech's the king. And Abraham is just a sojourner. Abraham is the one who is the weak and the vulnerable one, and Abimelech's the powerful and strong one. And yet in this passage, when God turns the tables, Abimelech is talking like a victim. What king talks like this? You know,
One who's seen God and he's
I mean,
he's-
really,
petrified.
it's amazing. He has been the way that this phrased, it's really pathetic in one sense. When you look at your estimation of Abimelech as this great king is greatly diminished. What kind of a great king is complains that he's been victimized by a stranger in his land, a guy traveling through his land, and not just any guy, but 100-year-old guy traveling through his land with his 90-year-old wife, you know? So it's really an odd thing happening, whether God never rebukes Abraham for these things. So we don't know to what degree Abraham may have sinned or was just, doing the best he can. But it's just a funny scene that you have this great king, this powerful king who does what he pleases, just sees a woman and sends and takes her, groveling before an old man, saying, what have you done to us? You've done things that ought not to be done, as if he is the victim.
It strikes me that if a king is approached by a much stronger king with a much larger army, he will bow down to him or suffer the consequences. And in this case, all of a sudden, he's found out that Abraham is a lot stronger than he thought.
Yeah. Or at least has God
Yeah.
clearly
Well, that's where his strength comes from.
running interference for him here, which is interesting.
So
Abraham,
in effect, Abraham has accomplished what he wanted to do. The only thing that strikes me that Abraham could have done is when he said he was going to take her, because, well, she is my wife also.
yeah, except that
Now he's afraid again.
if there is no fear of God in these people, what would that mean then?
Yeah.
That's
And
Abraham.
yeah, I mean, he would just fine, she's your wife, I will kill you and take her. And they do that. The kings would do that.
Yeah.
Didn't David do that?
Yeah.
Exactly what
Yes.
David did. He was a good king. He wasn't this corrupt, vile, godless king. He was a good king, and he, when given the power, determined to kill a man to take his wife. So, yeah, it's when you're dealing with kings, man, it's it's not like dealing with your neighbor. It's not like dealing with, and Abraham explains why he did it. And why does he do it?
There's no fear of God in this place. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought, quote, there is no fear of God at all in this place. I remember my dad told me about my grandfather saying that to a man one time. He meets a man and says, I'm afraid of you because you don't fear God. There's just, that's a terrifying thing to encounter someone who has no fear of God, no conscience. These are your psychopaths. These are the guys that are the cruelest. This is where you get the kind of the torturers and the sadistic people. They have no fear of God. They're like beasts without a conscience. And he says, there's no fear of God in this place. And this is the land of Canaan. There is a lot of wickedness going on around them, as you saw in Sodom. Remember, what you saw in Sodom, that might have been the worst of the areas, but don't think for a minute that was only Sodom and everyone else was really neighborly and fine. It's like the whole area is you're going to be dealing with people like this. There's no God in this place.
Well, and didn't you say that one of the reasons that they spent so much time in Egypt was because God was waiting for the fullness of their evilness to
Yeah.
take hold.
Yeah, it hasn't reached its complete. So Abraham is well aware of the wickedness of the Amorites
Yeah.
and the Canaanites there, but it hasn't reached the fullness yet of judgment like it did in Sodom. So by the time they come in, all of Canaan is like Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's time. It's done. This is Judgment Day. All right. So he says, there's no fear of God, and he says, at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Okay. Of my wife. So that's his fear, and he's, again, he does this everywhere he goes. It's not just twice that he did this. He does it everywhere he goes. So, and he says, and besides, technically she is my sister. Okay. That's actually helpful to know, because this is the time when we learn that Sarah is his sister, but it's not his full sister, half sister. Who is her father?
Her father is his father.
Remember his name?
Terah.
Terah. If you remember back in the beginning of these whole stories about Abraham, it began with, these are the generations of Terah. So all these stories here, you're finding that everyone is somehow connected to Terah. Abraham is Terah's son. Sarah is Terah's daughter. Lot is Terah's grandson. Isaac, Rebekah are all descendants of Terah. Rachel, Leah, Jacob, all descendants of Terah. Everyone here is like they're all coming from this one particular man. We don't really know anything about this guy, but he's sort of the head of this whole family that God is covenanting with. So here's we learn that Sarah also is from him, and that might be the reason it's there. Is a simple aside to let us know, hey, Sarah is also from Terah, just so you know. Okay, and so that's the kindness that she will show him. Say of me, he's my brother. It keeps him safer, and he can also protect her. And so, all right. So let's finish up this passage here. Elizabeth, would you get that for us? 14 down to 18.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Then, hi, how you guys? Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
All right, thank you. So Abimelech then, what does he do? Abimelech's, let's see, offering to Abraham.
Yeah, all kinds of goods.
And
Yeah.
silver.
Yeah, so he gives him sheep, oxen, servants.
Sounds like Moses again to me.
So
Well,
Abraham
it
continues
sounds
to-
like the silver is something that's specific to show that she has not been defiled.
Yes. So he sheep, oxen, servants, and returns Sarah, his wife, to him. And then what does he do as well? Verse 15.
offers
He he offers him his land.
Yeah, he gives him land to dwell where it pleases you. Okay. And then he says, as you mentioned, Bob, about Sarah. He gives 1,000 pieces of silver. And why does he do that?
as a
As a
sign
sign of her
Sign
innocence.
of innocence.
Is
her
this something that they would give as a dowry type of thing?
It wouldn't be so much a dowry. It would be, it's a, part of it, it's almost like a lawsuit where you, the money part of it, when the person has to pay for, the penalties for whatever it is, it's like, it's part of the vindication that, truly showing she is vindicated in this. She's innocent. I did wrong. I shouldn't have taken her. I'm paying this penalty. Like in a civil lawsuit, it's like, someone's been harmed in some way and they bring up a case and the company might settle, or they go to court and the jury comes back with a conviction. You need to pay, $1 million to this person, this company. And it's not just about the money that to pay for expenses, but the money, especially if it's a good amount of money, shows that the person was right, that they were innocent, and that's more important. Their name is more important than any money you would give them. So this $1,000, 1,000 pieces of silver, that's a good amount. And it's something to show that only a king can give that kind of amount, to show that, Sarah is righteous. There's no question. There is nothing of Abimelech that has entered into Sarah.
I find it interesting too, that when he's talking to Sarah, he refers to Abraham as her brother.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Yeah.
Kind of like tongue in cheek.
Yeah, you think that it could be given your brother. So, and then, but I want you to see here, look what happened. Remember, we talked about what was the promise of God to Abraham. From the very beginning, he promised him what? 3 things.
Land, that the world would be blessed through his seed,
Mhm.
and make a great nation of you.
Land, blessing, and descendants. Now, the first time he gave that promise, we had the story of Pharaoh, where all of that was at risk, and God brought it all back. Now he remembers that promise now 25 years later, and he's about to have it happen with the birth of Isaac in the next chapter. And it again happens that it's all threatened. Sarah is taken away from him. He's living in a hostile territory. All is at risk here. And when the Lord intervenes, he reaffirms every part of the promise. He blesses him with more sheep, oxen, and servants. He returns Sarah to him so that he can have the descendant that's promised. He saves his family. And he even gives him land where he can dwell now in peace in this land. And so those 3 blessings here, he gives him, he restores everything. And so Abraham is in a much stronger place than when he entered. And that's the amazing thing. It's like, you could say Abraham did everything wrong, and that's fine. And yet somehow everything is better for him at the end of the day than it was at the beginning. That's what's amazing about these stories is, fine, Abraham is not perfect. He's a sinful man. And I don't know to what degree he did wrong here, whether it was a great wrong or a little wrong, or maybe nothing wrong at all. But the reality is God intervenes, and this setback ends up making Abraham much richer and much more secure in the land, ready to have a son that God's promised him. So,
And it does make sense, you said before that about like Abimelech in this case, or in Egypt before Pharaoh, them being basically Satan attacking attacking God's plans through these people, because he's looking at destroying God's plan for the eventual birth of Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, really, yeah, our salvation's at stake here. If this doesn't happen, if God somehow, if it was possible for God to break a promise or to have it thwarted, so you can see there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing, of the principalities, the powers, the spiritual forces at work, the evil one, inspiring people like Abimelech. It's like he's not wittingly doing the work of the evil one, but he's unwittingly doing it. They have a phrase for it sometimes called he's a useful idiot. He doesn't realize what he's doing, but he's being used to thwart the plan of God. But the story finishes with Abraham. So we have Abimelech's offering to Abraham, and then Abraham prays for Abimelech. And when he prays, what happens?
He's healed.
Yeah. God heals Abimelech,
And all his people.
his wife, and female slaves, so that they bore children. So God had closed the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah. You see that? This is what this is about. It's about children. It's about this son of Abraham that must come. And it's similar to what happened in Egypt, where remember when Pharaoh was oppressing the Egyptians, what was he doing? I mean, when Pharaoh was oppressing the Israelites, what was he doing at the beginning of the Exodus that was so abominable?
Trying to kill all of the firstborn childs.
Yeah, all the firstborn
Yeah.
sons. He is trying to kill all the sons. And then God, in response, how does God retaliate for the freedom of his people?
He saves one of them and makes him their leader out of Egypt.
He saves one, Moses, and then when he brings them out of Egypt, the Lord is the one who kills the firstborn sons in the land of Egypt, and bringing them out. And he says to them, he makes that connection. He says, Israel is my firstborn son. Basically, as you are, what you're doing to my son, I will do to your son. And so here we have this, where it's like the womb of Sarah is threatened. And so in retaliation, it's all of Abimelech's household is threatened with their wombs being closed. And that's a big deal, especially for a king. All right. But the beautiful part of it is that Abimelech's a pagan guy, and yet God shows mercy to him. And Abraham plays the role of the priest interceding for this wicked people, and the Lord hears and he saves them. It's really actually kind of a beautiful story of salvation for a Gentile king and his people who are not part of the covenant. But God told Abraham, all nations will be blessed through you, didn't he?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And here he is, a nation being blessed through Abraham. God could have healed Abimelech apart from Abraham. He could have just said, return his stuff and I'll heal you. But he insists you're going to return it and he's going to pray for you. And only after Abraham prays, then I will heal you. To show that the blessing comes through Abraham. So
You have to wonder how does Abimelech remain a pagan after this?
yeah, I mean, I think he'll return with Isaac. He'll have a similar situation with Isaac. You get a sense that he probably did come to some kind of faith like Nebuchadnezzar did. Don't know how it's tough with kings. Their faith doesn't last very long with people in power. But who knows? But yeah, I think there definitely is a fear of God in Abimelech. You can see it because it tells us he was afraid, but he does exactly what the Lord told him to do. And that's evidence of faith. that he does exactly what the Lord tells him to do. So, but some of the points of this story that are significant, just a summary, is God is faithful to his promises, as we noted, as he always is, and he continues to watch over Abraham, whether he did right or wrong or whatever, but Abraham is really more of a passive player in this at the first start of it. But then God brings salvation through Abraham. He insists it be done through this man as a mediator. And that's why our salvation, we see it, is from God. It's through Christ to us, who is our Savior and our priest, the one who intercedes for us. And so, yeah, that's kind of where
Now,
we
when
are.
you say salvation, I mean, I don't see any evidence right here that Abimelech was actually saved and trusting in the God of Israel. I mean, he's saved in a sense of from being destroyed by God.
Yeah, that's what salvation. So salvation as a concept of he's being saved from this judgment of God here.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it comes, God saves him from judgment, but it's through Abraham. That's an important part. And so all nations we blessed through him. And that's why, we say, okay, it's going to be through Abraham, and the one for us, it's, that's why when Jesus appears in Matthew's gospel, it starts with Jesus, the son of David, the son of Abraham. He's the son of Abraham, who is the one who brings salvation to us all. It's through him. So you're in Genesis, you really see the concept of this, of God. God does not save the world directly. He saves the world through his man. He has his man on earth through whom he dispenses his blessings and salvation. And if you're connected to this man, you will be blessed. If you despise this man, you will be cursed.
Sure.
There it is. When Abimelech despised Abraham, taking his wife, he's cursed. When he humbles himself, returns him, and blesses him, he is now blessed. And that all leading us up to Christ, who is God's man. It's like everything comes down to the Christ. Will you bless him or will you curse him? That will determine your fate. So, all right. Any last questions, comments, or before we break?
It was good.
All right. This here.